The Unseen Shift, Chapter 1. The ordinary day every morning. Marcus Fields would walk into the small, bustling office of Truman and Company, a marketing firm nestled in downtown Philadelphia, known for its sharp eye in brand strategy and its loyal clientele. Marcus, in his late 20s, was an energetic and hardworking man with dreams of moving up in the world of business. But for years, he found himself stuck at the bottom rung of the corporate ladder. His manager, Jacob Thornton, was a man who had climbed that ladder effortlessly. A middle-aged white man with slicked back hair, a cold demeanor, and a reputation for being the best in the office, Jacob carried with him a silent arrogance. He had no patience for mistakes and had no respect for anyone he deemed as inferior, which, for him, often meant people who weren't white. Marcus had noticed the subtle comments, the offhand remarks, the dismissive stares. Jacob made it clear, in the most insidious ways, that Marcus would never be more than a background player in the world of business. But Marcus didn't care. He worked hard, stayed silent, and kept his eyes on the prize. He had to. His family depended on him. But despite his efforts, the air at Truman and Company had a way of stifling his ambition. He could hear the whispers in the hallways, the little jokes at his expense, the look of discomfort on Jacob's face whenever he had to interact with Marcus. One late afternoon, after Marcus had spent yet another hour perfecting a marketing proposal, he overheard Jacob speaking to a colleague in the hallway. "That kid, Marcus. I don't know why he's still here. He's good for filing, but he'll never get ahead. There's no place for someone like him in leadership. Just look at the way he talks, the way he carries himself." Jacob's voice was low, but Marcus could hear the disdain in it. Marcus clenched his jaw and turned away, pretending not to hear. He didn't want to give Jacob the satisfaction of knowing he had struck a nerve. But the pain of those words lingered, and the more Marcus thought about them, the angrier he became. Chapter 2. The turning point days passed, and Marcus continued to pour his heart into his work. He knew that to get ahead, he would have to prove himself, to show that he was more than just the color of his skin, or his accent, or the unfortunate circumstances that had led him to this point. But something was different. As the days wore on, the constant microaggressions from Jacob, the dismissive tone whenever Marcus offered an idea in meetings, began to weigh heavily on him. It wasn't just the obvious racism. It was the way Jacob treated him as though he didn't belong, like he was a shadow in a room full of light. It stung. But Marcus wasn't someone who backed down easily. Then, one morning, the email came through. The CEO of Truman and Company, a woman named Claire Davis, had sent a notice to all employees announcing an unexpected management restructuring. The company was expanding, and with that expansion, a new position, Senior Vice President of Marketing, was being created. The job would be open for internal applications, and the hiring process would begin immediately. Marcus didn't hesitate. This was his chance. If he could win this role, it would not only prove his worth to the company, but also, he couldn't help but admit, show Jacob just how wrong he had been. The following weeks were a whirlwind of presentations, interviews, and endless rounds of strategizing. Marcus put everything into his proposal, ensuring every detail was polished, every idea innovative. He spent nights working on the presentation, drafting and redrafting every slide. He wanted to be undeniable. But even as he worked harder than ever, Jacob seemed to delight in undermining him. One afternoon, Jacob pulled him aside after a meeting. "Marcus," Jacob said, his voice dripping with condescension, "I saw your latest proposal. It's cute, but I think you're overreaching. I'll make sure the higher-ups understand that you're ambitious, but maybe not quite ready." Marcus felt the old anger rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Thanks for the feedback. he replied flatly, before walking away. It wasn't worth arguing. Not now. Chapter 3. The shock the day of the announcement finally arrived. Marcus sat at his desk, trying to calm his nerves as the entire office gathered for the company-wide meeting. Claire Davis, the CEO, stood in front of the room with her usual air of authority. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work over the past few months, she began, her voice echoing through the room. As you know, with our expansion comes new opportunities. Today, I am pleased to announce the new Senior Vice President of Marketing. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he leaned forward. He hadn't expected the announcement so soon. He gripped the edge of his desk, staring at Claire with anticipation. And the person who has demonstrated exceptional leadership and vision in their work is Marcus Fields. The room fell silent. Marcus could feel his pulse racing. He blinked, unable to process what he had just heard. He hadn't expected to win, but hearing his name in front of the entire office sent a wave of disbelief over him. The stunned silence was broken by a slow, reluctant clap from Jacob. Marcus didn't look at him. He stood up, walking to the front of the room as Claire handed him the official offer letter. Congratulations, Marcus, Claire said, her smile warm. We're looking forward to seeing what you'll do in this role. Marcus felt a rush of emotions: pride, shock, vindication. But as he shook Claire's hand, he couldn't help but glance over at Jacob. His manager's face was a mask of confusion, his hands frozen at his sides. For a moment, Marcus thought he saw a flicker of something else, something darker, pass across Jacob's face. It wasn't just surprise. It was disbelief, maybe even fear. Chapter 4. The New Dynamic. Over the next few weeks, Marcus stepped into his new role with confidence. The transition was not without its challenges. His new position came with more responsibility, higher expectations, and the weight of proving that he truly deserved it. But there was one thing Marcus had learned over the years: he was not easily deterred. Jacob, on the other hand, struggled with the new dynamic. The office had been his domain for so long, and now the very person he had undermined, dismissed, and belittled was his superior. Marcus made it clear from the beginning that while he held the title of Senior VP, he wasn't there to play games. He was there to do the work. The first meeting they had together after Marcus took role was telling. Jacob sat at the table, his posture stiff, his eyes avoiding Marcus's. Marcus, Jacob said, his voice tight. I just want to say that I'm surprised by your success. I didn't expect you to get this far. But now that you have the position, I expect you to keep up with the high standards we've set in the past. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. I'll keep that in mind, Jacob. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to share them. But remember, we're in a new era now. Jacob nodded, his face flushing. The shift was unmistakable. Marcus had taken the reins, and he wasn't going to let anyone hold him back. Chapter 5. Redemption and Realization. As weeks turned into months, Marcus proved to be more than just capable in his new role. His innovative campaigns revitalized the company, bringing in new clients and increasing revenue. He gained the respect of the other senior leaders, many of whom had previously doubted him. Jacob, meanwhile, was relegated to his old tasks, struggling to come to terms with the reality that the man he had once looked down upon was now his boss. The frustration ate at him, and his bitterness became more apparent. One day, after a particularly tense meeting, Jacob tried to speak to Marcus alone. Look, Marcus, he started, his voice hesitant. I know I wasn't always supportive. I can admit that now, but I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think someone like you would. Marcus cut him off with a firm but calm tone. Jacob, don't make excuses. It's not about what you thought was possible. It's about what I knew I could do, even if you couldn't see it." Jacob paused, a long silence filling the space between them. Finally, he nodded, his gaze lowering. "You've earned it, Marcus." "I won't deny that." Marcus gave him a nod of acknowledgement, but there was no sense of triumph in his heart. There was no need for it. He had already won. And in that moment, Marcus realized that the true victory wasn't about proving Jacob wrong. It was about proving to himself that no matter the obstacles, no matter how many people tried to hold him down, he had the strength, resilience, and vision to rise above it all. The world had underestimated him, but now they would have to reckon with his success.